The wind howled across the grasslands like the sigh of the earth itself. Dawn had just touched the edge of the horizon, staining the withered plains a dark, burnt honey, in a place where every step could be the last, where the strong survive and the weak vanish without a trace. A lone figure stood silently atop a high mound, head held high, mane whipping in the wind. His gaze stretched far into the distance as if piercing the horizon itself. Not because he was searching for anything, but because the entire savanna was waiting for him to move. This was Maasai Mara, a land of blood, dust, and endless coups of power. And that lion, the one whose eye would never fully close, had become the name that changed this land. Before he was called by that harsh name, he was only a cub growing up in grasslands that seemed to stretch forever. No throne, no legend, only the sound of wind, the scent of raw meat, and lessons of survival taught by claw. When his mane began to thicken and muscles rolled beneath sun-darkened skin, he and 3 other young males were driven out of their pride. Not because they were weak, but because it was time to write their own fate. 4 wanderers crossing the endless savanna, sleeping beneath an open sky, feeding on leftovers, avoiding the gaze of dominant males. But that was only the surface. Inside them, what was growing was not just strength, it was an unspoken oath. The first time they faced a much larger male, no one imagined that battle would alter the history of the land. Wind surged, dust rose in blinding clouds, a roar tore through the air, and in the chaos, he lunged like a spear. A savage swipe ripped open his right eyelid. Blood streamed down his cheek. Hot and metallic, the world tilted before him. For a brief moment, all sound disappeared, only the pounding of his heart and the scent of blood remained. Then he roared. Not a roar of pain, a declaration, a challenge hurled at the sky. He struck back, ferocious, relentless. The opponent faltered, stepped back, finally turned and fled. When the dust settled, he was still standing, one eye bleeding, the other blazing, and a scar beginning to form, not only on flesh, but in the memory of the savanna. From that day forward, the name Scarface was born. No one crowned him, no ceremony, no emblem, but word spread faster than the wind. A young male with a smoldering gaze, accompanied by 3 inseparable allies. They did not tear each other apart for dominance. They did not betray. They hunted together, fought like a single body with 4 heads. Such unity was rare in a world that worshipped individual strength, and it made others uneasy. Their conquest did not happen in a single day. It unfolded over long nights of stalking, in fiery clashes, in the smell of sweat, blood, and crushed grass. Territory by territory was reclaimed. Male by male was pushed back. Pride by pride freed from former rule. When the 4 figures strode side by side beneath a burning sunset, the savanna fell quiet, not purely out of fear, but because their presence felt like a new law being written. Scarface was not the largest, not the fastest, but he possessed what others lacked, a brutal resilience. He endured pain better than any, and he never turned his back on a challenge. One moonless night, a group of young males dared to enter his territory. They were more numerous, younger, hot-blooded. The battle erupted in darkness, roars mixed with the crack of bone. When the sun rose, the grass lay flattened in patches. The intruders were gone. Scarface stood in the center of the battlefield, breathing heavily, his mane stained with blood, the old scar etched deeper in the light. He did not need to roar. His silence declared, "This land is still mine." Years passed. The wound never fully healed. One eye remained open, red as a glowing ember. His vision weakened, But instead of diminishing, he seemed to grow more dangerous. He learned to listen more keenly, to scent more sharply, to feel the tremor of the earth before an enemy appeared. People began coming to Maasai Mara in greater numbers, not just to see lions. They wanted to see him, the lion whose eye never slept. Lenses pointed toward him whenever he appeared on the dirt road between the grasses. The clicking of cameras did not disturb him. He passed slowly, as though everything were merely grass beneath his feet. On some afternoons, he lay beneath an acacia tree, wind moving through his mane. No roar, no movement, just watching, and in that gaze, people did not see only a predator. They saw time, war, pride without display. But the savanna never stands still. One day, in the fiercest clash yet, he was struck head-on. A rival's claws sank into the already scarred face. Blood poured. The world tilted again. This time the pain was sharper, deeper, more dangerous. Some believed it was the end. But he did not fall. He staggered, then stood tall again, roared once, short, but enough to startle birds from the sky. He charged again, as if pain only sharpened him. When the battle ended, he had lost more than vision. He had lost wholeness, but he kept what mattered most, his place. From then on, the image of the one-eyed lion standing beneath sunset became a symbol of the land. Not because he was undefeated, but because he would not yield. Then came the day a human spear pierced his thick hide. Not from pursuit, only a misunderstanding of territory. This time, the opponent had no mane, no claws, and was dangerous in another way. He was gravely wounded. At the fragile edge of life, humans chose to intervene, not to tame, not to possess, only to save. He was treated and returned to where he belonged. In that moment, between wilderness and humankind, a quiet respect was established. Scarface returned, slower, heavier, but still himself. In the years that followed, his 3 allies disappeared one by one. No farewell, just a day when they were no longer beside him. The savanna felt larger than ever. He began to walk alone. No more 4 shadow patrols. No coordinated hunts. Only solitary footsteps through dry grass. Yet strangely, solitude did not diminish him. It made him deeper, more solemn. Some evenings, he stood long on the old mound, looking toward what had once been the heart of a small empire. Wind carried the scent of damp earth and memory. He no longer sought to expand his domain. He did not chase dreams of ruling the entire plain. He held his land, defended it, lived within it like a final fortress. And time did what no enemy could. His mane thinned, his steps slowed, his roar no longer carried as far. Scars layered upon scars like a map of past wars. Yet whenever he appeared, even just a quiet silhouette in tall grass, people held their breath. Because they knew they were witnessing something that does not repeat twice in a lifetime. One June morning, beneath a familiar tree, he lay still. No signs of violence, no fresh wounds, only stillness. The savanna kept breathing, the wind kept blowing, but one heartbeat had stopped. There was no funeral, no ritual, only people who came and stood long beside where he lay. Cameras lowered, voices hushed. They understood a chapter had closed. Scarface did not leave behind a vast empire. He did not conquer the entire plain. He did not need to. His legacy was not in acreage, but in how he stood firm when the world tried to knock him down. In harsh Maasai Mara, where every legend is tested to its limit, one lion chose a different way to live, not loud, not showy, but never bowing his head. His death did not halt the savanna. The sun still rose red at the horizon. Antelope still skimmed across dew-wet grass. Young males still roared at the edges of former territory, testing whether the vacancy was real. But some spaces cannot be filled by claws. In the days after, people revisited old photographs. A lion with a scar slashed across his right eye. A gaze that never closed. A heavy but proud stride. Dust trailing behind him like battlefield smoke. Images of him resting beneath trees. Sunset burning his mane copper. No need to roar. No need to bare teeth. Presence was enough. That presence transformed Maasai Mara from mere wilderness into a place that held a living symbol. Safari drivers told his story to newcomers, not with theatrics, but with respect. They pointed toward the old mound where he once stood for hours observing. They lowered their voices recounting the battle that tore his eyelid. They spoke of nights when his roar seemed to make the ground tremble beneath the tires. Those who had seen him in person often clenched their hands unconsciously when recalling it. Not out of fear, but from the feeling of having faced something larger than themselves. Scarface was not the only lion to rule this land. Before him were others. After him there would be more. That is the law, but law cannot explain why some lives pass like wind, while others leave footprints so deep even time struggles to erase them. Perhaps because he did not fight merely to survive. He fought as if each battle were a declaration. During one brutal dry season, water dwindled, remaining pools became flashpoints, hippos dominated, crocodiles waded beneath mirror-still surfaces, thirst-crazed antelope risked everything to drink. And he appeared, walking slowly toward the water's edge. Few believed a lion with damaged vision would dare approach so close. But he stood there, staring into the water, not charging recklessly, not retreating, just calm, like one who understands the boundary between recklessness and courage. A hippo bellowed, churning waves. He remained. One beat, two, then turned away, leaving the surface to settle. Not every battle requires blood. Not every strength demands proof through death. In his final years, he no longer chased prey as he once had. He chose timing, position, patience. Young males sometimes tested the edges of his territory with provocative roars. His three former allies lived on only in the savanna's memory. Hunter, silent as night. Sikyo, fierce as the first blaze of dry season. Marani, enduring as rock against flood. When they were four, they beat like one heart. As each departed, that rhythm weakened. On some nights, he lifted his head toward a sky full of stars. No one knows what a lion thinks. But in the stillness around him, one could almost believe he remembered. The chases in the rain. The battles back to back. The days when his mane was thick and his body unmarked by wounds. Time shows no mercy. It wears down muscle, slows reflexes, and eventually forces every king from his throne. But it cannot take away how one lived. The day he lay down for the last time, no enemy surrounded him, no signs of struggle, only a body weary from more than a decade of unbroken battles. He chose the familiar shade of a tree that had witnessed countless evenings of rest between patrols.